Welcome to Kiffin's Keep, an intellectual resource with a pillar and buttress for the truth, which is the church. This is a project at the London Lyceum, which is all about serious thinking for a serious church. I am Jordan Stefaniak, president of the London Lyceum and host of Kiffin's Keep. And as always, I'm excited to be here with you guys today, even though this is the second time I'm recording this episode for you all, because I am dumb and recorded only the audio. So you'll get the extra spicy Jordan here today, as you have for some other episodes. So you'll have to go find the ones that are also extra spicy. Before we jump in, reminder, go ahead and like the video if you enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything, and drop a comment. Love to hear from you guys, even if you disagree with me and you're wrong. I'm kidding. A lot of you guys who disagree are probably right. I'm not right all the time. I'm actually wrong quite a bit, but I enjoy hearing from you all. Topic today is metaphysics. I'm going to answer the question, what is metaphysics? So I want to give a brief crash course in what it is, what it isn't, and to especially help theologians, because oftentimes theologians like to use the newfangled 50-cent word, metaphysics, and insert it with everything that they're doing. The metaphysics of the incarnation, that's a real category, but people like to overuse it. The metaphysics of John 1:1, like in some sense, yes, that's true. But oftentimes theologians like to just use it to sound smart. And so I want to help dispel some mystery and some things about metaphysics. So when we think about metaphysics, it's a branch of philosophy. There's typically 4 branches of study of philosophy, if you want to broadly categorize them. One of them will be ethics, self-explanatory. One of them will be logic, self-explanatory. Epistemology is the other one, which would be the study of knowledge, or how we know things. And then you have metaphysics, which is supposed to be sort of the study of reality. It's supposed to engender a natural sense of wonder. Why is something that way? What is that? What is a table? What is a chair? What is time? What is change? These sort of questions are metaphysical questions. They're trying to discern the fundamental nature of reality and want to organize and systematize reality. Wants to explain and give hierarchies of different things, describe general features. It's supposed to be above and beyond physics. So it goes back to Aristotle calling his work physics, and then he has this work after physics called metaphysics. It's above in its level of generality and beyond the observational investigation of the world. Okay, that's sort of like the real rough and ready definition of metaphysics. Let me give you some examples. Let me walk you through some questions. First, I want to answer the question of, but metaphysics isn't in my Bible, so why do I even care? This is a Christian show, so naturally I might as well engage that question, because I think that's probably a pretty relevant one of, I don't like metaphysics, or it all just causes problems, or it's really confusing and I don't understand it. Why do I need to know it if it's not in my Bible? Well, sure, it's in your Bible. Read Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to find God creating things according to their kinds. The birds of the air according to its kind. The animals, all these different things according to their kind. That's a metaphysical thing to say, kinds, where you have different sort of categories, that buckets, where it carves nature at its joints. The Bible, in a large sense, is assuming and deploying metaphysics across the spectrum. So it's not a metaphysical textbook or a handbook, then that's okay. It doesn't need to be. It's not supposed to be. But it's assuming the use and necessity of metaphysics, because we need metaphysics to make sense of reality, to give structured explanations for why things are the way they are. And so before I jump in any further, I should tell you about some books that you should get if you want to study metaphysics and understand it. If you're a beginner or if you're somewhat intermediate, these might be useful. I'm going to show them to you. The first one I would recommend to any beginner, it's this tiny little Oxford VSI version of metaphysics. It's by Stephen Mumford, and it is about 100 pages, and he does a very nice job of sort of introducing the topic of metaphysics. All the stuff in the Oxford VSI series are useful, in my opinion. They're very good. That one is no exception. It is very quality, so I would recommend that to anyone beginning their study of metaphysics. After that, I would say there's 2 volumes that I would say are the next in line. These right here. See if you can see them. One of these is Anna Marmodoro and Erasmus Mayer. I think this is a nice, fine introduction to metaphysics. It is roughly 200 pages, and it is in my mind, quite nice. It's got an Aristotelian flair. It talks about Aristotle a little bit more than other introductions, but it is very good. My personal favorite is next. This is Tim Pickavance and Rob Coons, both gentlemen and scholars. They also have a massive atlas of reality that's like the real deal that could be 100 pounds. No, I think it's like 1,000 pages. That's an expansion of this. That if you're real serious about metaphysics, go get that. But this is a nice introduction in my mind. It covers all the topics, covers some of the costs and the benefits of the various views, gives you a sense for what metaphysics is about and which views are preferable to others, though it's not making the decision for you. Finally, if you're a little bit more advanced, I might suggest this one. It's another introduction. It's Michael Lux and Thomas Crisp. Michael, if I said your name wrong, I'm sorry. It is in my mind another valuable introduction that I think is a little bit deeper than Coons and Pickavance. These all are structured a little bit differently. There's other volumes that I might say go read. Peter Van Inwagen, I've got him on the shelf. I don't really love his as much. I don't like the structure of it as much. I think he's a little bit obtuse in some ways. I like Van Inwagen a lot. I do a lot of work on him in my dissertation, but I just don't love his introduction as much. There's other stuff. The Rutledge Companion to Metaphysics is a very valuable resource if you're an intermediate student trying to understand more, because that's going to give you a lot more engagement with all the different topics of metaphysics, historical, contemporary, and scientific sort of questions about the nature of time and other things that you wouldn't get otherwise. So I would recommend checking that out if that's something you wanted. I'll try to remember to add the links to these books in the show notes or the description. I might forget, so I apologize if I do. You can comment and tell me that I forgot it, and I can add it if that's the case. So when we think about metaphysics, there's all sorts of subdisciplines to metaphysics. There are the metaphysics of truth makers, the metaphysics of causation and powers, the metaphysics of properties, the metaphysics of particles, particulars, metaphysics of modality and necessity, and time, persistence, mereology, which is the study of parts and wholes, or human persons, which has its own subdiscipline of philosophy of mind. There's all sorts of topics because you're covering reality. So there's a lot of ways you can sort of carve this up and discuss things. And some are huge fields. The philosophy of time has all sorts of people working in it, and it has a lot of scientific stuff into it too, so it can be difficult to follow along because it is high level, high powered thinking. The stuff on properties and stuff on particulars can be hard to wade through, but these are all sort of subdisciplines of metaphysics. Do we need metaphysics though? Like I said, I think we do. I think you need to understand. You don't need to understand all the complexities of the debates about metaphysical. What is a truth maker? Is every truth maker necessary? Or do you want to have a powers ontology or something else? Is causation Humean or not? Or are properties real things? Or what are particulars? Are they substances that do you want to have trope theory or bundle theory? You don't need to know all of that to realize that metaphysics is profoundly important for our lives. There's all sorts of questions that we engage and think about that are metaphysical questions. We just don't know that because we don't know what metaphysics is or is about. A question, though, that I wanted to briefly engage in this brief introduction to metaphysics is that of classical metaphysics. What is classical metaphysics? I think oftentimes now the terminology is thrown around. You got to have classical metaphysics. If you give up classical metaphysics, you give up classical doctrine, you give up orthodox doctrine. So what are we talking about here? I think this is a classic case, no pun intended, for theologians not understanding what metaphysics is. Because oftentimes what's saddled up with classical metaphysics is all sorts of stuff that's like very contested, even in the classical period. Though I think most people, when they come to it, are just wanting to say that things have essences or natures. Things are substances that are real entities, that their nature sort of carve nature at its joints. And in that sense, yes, that is a classical sort of metaphysics. If all we're talking about is entities, real ones, that are substances and they carve nature at its joints, then yeah, that's there. But if you start going beyond that about the nature of properties and the nature of necessity, the nature of time and persistence and these different things, you are quickly going to realize that there are a million different viewpoints out there all across the periods, and there's not this neat and tidy, we've got everything we need in classical metaphysics that just suddenly evaporated in the 17th and 18th centuries, and now we need to go get it back and get to the pristine era that existed in a long ago past. So classical metaphysics is far narrower in scope than theologians will lead you to believe. But what you'll find out is most theologians haven't done their homework and haven't done any reading in philosophy, really. Maybe they've done they took an undergrad course, and that's the extent of their experience or knowledge. Maybe they're self-taught in some ways, but philosophy is one of those disciplines you really need an expert to tell you, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, that's not how that works. And so there is a significant gap amongst a lot of theologians when it comes to philosophy, just not recognizing or realizing the diversity or the complexity of some of the views that are out there. So that is at its core a high-level overview of metaphysics. Let me give you an example, though. A metaphysical question versus sort of a more physical question might be related to my desk that I have here. My desk is made up of particular particles. It's definitely, I don't think, real wood. It's probably some sort of faux plastic stuff. That could be a physical question, but metaphysical question begins to ask the question of what is it that really makes this a desk and not some other tool, maybe a table, or I guess what makes a desk or a table a desk? What is the distinguishing factor? Is it its use? Could I bring my kitchen table in here and put all my stuff on it and call it a desk? Is it really a desk? And they have questions of if I take out parts, if I take out this screw, is that screw still a desk screw? What if I take that screw and I screw it into a chair? Is it still a desk screw, or is it now a chair screw? These are sort of like the metaphysical questions that are going on that can be debated and complicated and difficult, but they're still very, very important. You think about the metaphysics of things like gender, the metaphysics of things like, I don't know, human nature in general. These can be very profoundly important questions. They may be difficult and sort of you have to chop and make some difficult decisions, but they're crucial for how we live our lives. A lot of us just assume the reality of metaphysics. We assume that human persons are supposed to do particular things because of their natures. We assume that they're supposed to be moral, rational creatures, but that's resting on metaphysical principles. But that doesn't mean we are given the right to just sort of wield metaphysics as the cure-all to every ailment and the problem for every issue. It's not this like one size fits all thing where it's like I don't remember the dude's name who replaced Billy Mays. There's a meme out there where it's got this tub of water, it's got a hole, it's putting out water, and it's got him like slapping on some special thing he's selling that stops the leak. And people do all sorts of memes about big problem, slap on something like, let's say the medieval period or even the reformers. Any problem you got, slap on Augustine. Problem solved, you got Augustine. Same thing could be said for contemporary theologians with the word metaphysics. Metaphysics. Any problem you got, metaphysics is the answer. And that's just really a very shallow way of thinking about metaphysics. Slap on metaphysics, and that adds oftentimes 8 more problems because there's 8 different views in metaphysics of how that could be parsed out. And there's subviews and subviews and subviews. However, generally speaking, yes, you should be dealing with metaphysical questions, but everybody is. No one's a non-metaphysician. It's impossible to not be doing metaphysics. People like to say, there are some people who like to say they're post-metaphysics and they're not doing metaphysics, but they are. Everything is metaphysical by necessity. Everything is dealing with reality by necessity. I don't care who you are, what you say, you're doing metaphysics. Now, maybe you have a particular definition of metaphysics that you would say, that's why I'm not doing it. But yes, you are if you're doing it in this, if you take metaphysics as the more general standard definition of what it is. You're doing it. So why should you care about metaphysics? Because you should care about the world that God created. You should have a natural sense of wonder to ask questions. This is why, well, this isn't the only reason why, but Jesus said that we should become like children. so that we may inherit the kingdom of heaven. And in some sense, children like to ask the question why all the time. If you're around toddlers, you know this. And that's part of what is metaphysics, is just asking why and what and how. Basic questions about basic things and realizing, wow, reality is so much richer and more complicated than I gave it credit for. I just kind of assumed and was going through life not really thinking about it. But suddenly, when you get into metaphysics, it's all sorts of opportunities to wonder and marvel at creation. Wonder and marvel at how God has set up and ordered things in this world. There's all sorts of wonderful questions in metaphysics that you get to engage in. Numerical identity and relative identity and questions of change. What is it that really accounts for change? What is change? What is time? What is space? What is a substance? What does it mean to have an accidental sort of property? Is that a real property? Is that a mental property? What are properties? All sorts of really relevant questions that have all sorts of applications to various theological disciplines are in metaphysics. So I would suggest, if you're not a philosopher by training, you're a theologian, you're a pastor or something else, go read some metaphysics textbooks like I suggested. Go get yourself a copy of some of these and read them. Go read Aristotle, sure. Go read Plato, sure. You should be reading those too, but these are going to help guide you into some of the more robust categories and discussions than some of these other ones. Aristotle's fantastic. He's just difficult to read, so just know what you're getting into when you do that. Plato's much more fun and easy to read. But these books are going to cover a lot more topics than are Aristotle and Plato and these other like. So if I'm to suggest, I would say read all that stuff. Get reading. It's going to benefit you. Even if you're a New Testament scholar or exegete, it's going to benefit you there. Old Testament. If you're a pastor, it's going to benefit your ministry, I think, to study metaphysics, because it's going to help you ask the right appropriate questions about pastoral problems. It's going to give you resources as you think about potential problems and theological issues. It's going to give you the opportunity to have more robust explanations, open up avenues that you didn't think were possible, imaginative ideas that are suddenly there because of studying this. So I think it is really, really relevant for you, even if it doesn't look directly to be relevant. So that's my brief little intro to what is metaphysics. Do you think I missed something? Is something unclear that you didn't understand? Let me know. Happy to do follow-ups on any of these sort of things and set up some time to work through them and talk about them and maybe make them useful. So I appreciate you all for tuning in and watching to Kiffin's Keep, and I look forward to continuing to soon.